Hello, 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 and welcome to the Summer of 26, a global soccer showdown. Here we are 3 days before the World Cup kicks off here on this Tuesday morning with myself, Gary Striker, the villain of the year, the Qooligan. We're going to be strapping in for this every single day, and our special guest, Nathan Joyce of the Copa Club and our South American expert. Is that a peace sign or is that?
No, that's 2 days before the start of the World Cup. So
if you're counting this full day and then Wednesday and then Thursday, it's a matter of perspective and time zones, I suppose, right?
No, this is where you are so wrong, Gary. Yeah. As the editor-in-chief of hooligansoccer.com, I can assure you it is 2 days.
We're going for 2 days, officially 2 days.
And a number of hours, only until Mexico-South Africa kicks off in the in one of the more brutalist stadiums inside Mexico. It's going to be awesome.
That's going to be fun.
Awesome.
Nathan, welcome. Hello. Do you want to maybe give us a little bit of an intro about you and sort of your writing and your content that you're creating as well, so everyone can know where to find you and what you specialize in?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, Nathan Joyce, founder of the Copa Club, where we talk things all South American football, domestic football, international football. Incredibly busy at the moment. We've got shows coming out of our ears, bonus episodes, match previews, just everything you can possibly think of. We normally spend quite a lot of time looking at player profiles, and so there's plenty of little bonus episodes. We've got one lined up this week looking at young South Americans who could perform really well and potentially seal those big moves, because there's always one or two that come across to Europe post World Cup. I think James Rodriguez, if we're going to roll back the years. So yeah, we talk a lot about South American football, and hopefully by the end of the World Cup, we will be one of the biggest podcast platforms around South American football. That is the aim. It's been a strong start so far. We've previewed all the teams. It feels like the World Cup's finished before it's even started, but we're ready to keep on going.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Yeah. Cool. Well, we brought you on here, of course, because what we wanted to do, obviously, in the run up to the 2/3 days until the World Cup starts, we will be obviously featuring, we had a betting episode yesterday. We had obviously sort of some of the big European teams. We were covering England, France, and then some of the sort of more Northern European teams that we were covering. So today we are covering the continent of South America. So that's why you are here. So let's get into it. So if we just sort of go through the groups, we can see the first group, which features a South American team, is Group C, which is Brazil. So we'll start on probably sort of the more sexier Samba side of it. We will be discussing this, and what was interesting is I think this is the first World Cup where Brazil have come into this tournament and they've not been considered in the top four in terms of just the favorite rankings. I think there's a long time since that has happened. Would you agree with that? And sort of, yeah, what's your sort of take on the current state of Brazil? And are they maybe a dark horse that could surprise everyone with Carlo Ancelotti and his managerial magic?
Brazil are an enigma. I don't think that I've seen a worse Brazilian team in my lifetime. Finishing fifth in the qualifiers, very fortunate that the South American qualifiers is generous with 6 or 7 places. And it's just been a car crash ever since Copa America, maybe before. And maybe they're putting it together in the build up to this World Cup. And I think there's so many red flags with all the nations at the top of this World Cup. I think it's the most open World Cup we've seen in a very long time, which does bring Brazil into the conversation. But is that because other nations aren't as strong? Yes, they have Carlo Ancelotti in charge. Yes, they have an abundance of attacking quality. If you go through their team on paper, if you simmed it across Football Manager 100 times, they may make the final 95 of those, but this isn't played on a video game. And I haven't been impressed with Brazil for quite a long period of time. Defensively, there's concerns in the fullback areas. If Ancelotti plays a 2-man midfield, and he's been very stubborn about that, I think they will exit the competition. But if he does change to a 3-man midfield, look, we never know. There's loads of conditions maybe in their favour. We know that South American teams perform very well in the US or North American or Central American World Cups over the years. A lot's changed since the last time Brazil won in 2002. But then again, they also finished fifth in qualifying then and went on to get their 5th ever World Cup. It's been a long time since they've won one, and I'd be very surprised if they win one this time round. But I think they're going to be a very intriguing team to watch, especially with how much attacking talent they've got. I think for the neutral, it's just going to be very kamikaze. So yeah, a really fun team to watch.
Great. And then In terms of the attacking lineup, as you mentioned, we've been kicking back and forward this whole Neymar debate and sort of, again, it seems like, there's a couple of these star players who have actually become, potentially sort of like, the asterisks next to them of they could be toxic players or they could be actually net negatives for their teams. We're talking obviously Ronaldo for Portugal, Mbappe for France. And Neymar, I think, is probably sort of the tip of the iceberg here in a way as well. So do you, if you were in Ancelotti's shoes, would you have taken Neymar over João Pedro or someone else? Or sort of how are you reading this Neymar situation? Or do you think he did this to kind of appease the sort of 300 odd million Brazilians because they would have gone nuts if he'd not gone?
I think Ancelotti was damned if he did or damned if he didn't. I think the most interesting part is that we forget that he hasn't played in the Brazilian national team since 2023 when he suffered that horrendous injury against Uruguay. And I think, maybe appeasing fans, trying to bring a little bit more creativity to the table, thinking about what he's going to bring to the dressing room. I think all of that's maybe valuable. But if Brazil don't beat Morocco or lose to Morocco in that opening game and Neymar doesn't get on the pitch, it's going to be hell on earth in Brazil about why did Neymar not play. If Neymar comes on the pitch and Morocco still win or get a point or play better, it's going to be a case of why have we wasted a spot with somebody who's been so injury prone for a long period of time. And since returning to Brazil, he hasn't performed up to the standards for Santos that is eye-catching enough to be like, yes, he deserves to be on that plane. So it's a really tricky one. I don't know if he's even going to feature in the first couple of games, to be honest with you. They reckon he may be fit for the Morocco game, but I think it'd be stupid to throw him in against a team that can win this group and play with such a high press, and they will back themselves to beat Brazil. So throwing him in against Haiti when they're maybe 2 or 3-0 up, I think, look, that's perfect to boost confidence and just his presence around the dressing room. But the last thing Ancelotti will want this to become is the Neymar World Cup. But it may have been the Neymar World Cup if he didn't turn up. So it's a really interesting debate, but it's up to Ancelotti to manage that, to go out and win 3 games in this group and just look to Neymar if and when. But he's going to be in the headlines regardless if he's on the pitch or not. So look, I'm happy he's there. Whether it's a fully fit Neymar or not, it's his last chance to be at a World Cup, probably one of the greatest players of my generation. So it'd be really upsetting for him not to be there. But what is he going to bring? I don't know. Is the answer to that question. So yeah, really intriguing. But I think Brazil have bigger problems away from Neymar.
Yeah, I liked your take on that. I don't think Ancelotti was really given much of a, like you said, rock in a hard place, Scylla Charybdis type of scenario, man. He was going down the whirlpool and wasn't going to be pretty regardless of what happens. Let's just hope that, unlike Odysseus's crew, he doesn't end up all looking like pigs and swine. That was a little classical Greek reference there for all those classics fans who listen to us.
And is this where you put the ad read in for the Odyssey coming up as well? Is this?
No, Damon did not reach out to me. I'm sorry. As close as he and I are, he's been giving me the cold shoulder for quite some time. And I think it was the fallout I had in the Benefer scenario. I don't know. It's just weird. Although he is a noted supporter, I believe, of Brazilian soccer, Matt Damon, just in case anybody's curious. Now, that aside, I actually think Neymar was a mistake. I was opposed to him joining the Brazilian side. I certainly do not have as much expertise as you do, Nathan, but it just felt wrong to me. And I sometimes just go with these gut feelings of mine. I've been burned way too many times, and I might get burned on this one too. But I think that Pedro represents a path forward and not a sort of sidestep into, yeah, fine, let's take the, this Samba dancer who is so injured and so, I think, out of form. He'll bring everybody down. I think he's not going to elevate. I think he's going to be a millstone around everybody's neck. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I
don't think they even needed to take João Pedro. Yes, he's played so well for Chelsea this season, but has he played well in his 8 or 9 appearances for Brazil? No. Does he fit into the 4-2-4 that Ancelotti wants to play? No. It was more a case of they should have brought more midfielders, and the fact that Wesley, the right back, got injured and they were able to call up Edison from Atlanta, who's now on his way to Man United, is maybe just that extra little bit Brazil need. Now they have 6 midfielders. The fact that they only brought 5 was ludicrous. and maybe pointed towards Ancelotti wanting that 4-2-4 formation. So this is what I mean in terms of it's not a Neymar debate to be had, but that's what everybody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll wrap up Brazil briefly, but one final question on the Brazil side. Are there any Brazil wonder kids that you think could come out of this shining with sort of a crack at being sort of young player of the tournament or getting that big move?
There's not really any youngsters that they've made the moves now. We're talking about Endrick, we're talking about Ryan. Like, they've all made their move because the players are moving earlier and earlier. I think the player to potentially look out for is Danilo, who went to Nottingham Forest, returned to Botafogo, and he's shone in his first few games for Brazil. And I think he's already made it clear he doesn't want to stay at Botafogo. So I think he's the player who will secure a move back to Europe and potentially a top 6 side.
Endrick, any thoughts on him? Do you think he looks good? Yeah.
Interesting.
Endrick, I've said for years now, he's a future Ballon d'Or winner. He's world class. He needs to start. He is Brazil's next number 9 for the next 10 years. He is just an unbelievable striker. Looked so good in Brazil. Moved to Real Madrid the same season they signed Mbappe, which just maybe he didn't know about, and that's maybe which halted his progress. But I'm so glad European fans and football fans in general got to see how good he was for Lyon. And he's just a player who's just got so much confidence and he thrives wearing a Brazilian shirt where a lot of players drown. And I think maybe he won't start the first game, but I think Ancelotti will soon realise his mistakes. And yeah, Endrick's going to be a key part. If Brazil want to win this World Cup, Endrick has to start.
Interesting. Okay. All right, let's move through then to Group D and look at Paraguay. Same group as US, opening game with the US on Friday. Do you think the US have a chance here against Paraguay, or this should be pretty straightforward for the US, or what's your take? Because I'm not too familiar with the Paraguay squad and team, to be perfectly honest.
This is the group of death, right? I think even Australia being underestimated. It's every World Cup has one, and I feel like all 4 nations will feel confident coming into this. I think where Paraguay wouldn't have wanted to play US in the first game or in the group at all. I think the US will get out of the group, whether that's in first or second or third. I don't think that's a problem here. For me, I think Paraguay will be looking at that Australia game in round 3 because you'll only need 3 points in order to qualify here, which is the beauty of this new format. Now, the negative side of it is that Julio Enciso is out injured for at least the first 2 games, potentially the last one. He is the star player. He got injured in Paraguay's last game just before they flew to the US, and it's going to be a massive loss. They've got some really good attackers, and like the team is pretty solid. They brought in Gustavo Alfaro, the manager, after a really disappointing Copa America, and were fantastic at home. Beat Argentina, beat Brazil, but they have a really poor record on US soil, and that is a concern of mine. I just think it's a really tough group. I don't think anyone would want to face the US. Not saying the US are a powerhouse, but I think maybe decisions are going to go their way. I'd like to see who's sat in the VAR room when the US are playing, but just lining up against the hosts in the first round is always really difficult. Even look, South Africa to 2010, like it's just a nation that you don't want to play. You don't want to play Canada, Mexico, or the US within the opening fixture. So they've been dealt a cruel hand. I think Turkey are going to win this group, but they only need 3 points. So they'll be looking at that Australia game, hopefully get Enciso back. But they've got some nice players. Ramon Sosa on the wing. They've just got Maurizio, who's Brazilian, but has Paraguayan grandparents, I believe. So he's switched his allegiance for this World Cup. So there is enough attacking quality in there. And well, I've got to bring up Diego Gomez from Brighton as well. What a player he is. So they've got a good spine, maybe a bit slow at the back. And that what could undo them here. But I think they've got 1 win in them so they can get through. But yeah, playing the US in the opening round is really tricky.
Yeah, I won Turkey to win the group. Nathan, you are quite the rabble rouser. That's a bold and spicy take, very much in keeping with what I like to hear, because I am in a similar mindset. I agree that the US will get out of this group. The bar is so low that even a US team can clear it. Which is good. And the last 2 games that I watched of the US, I'll be honest, a month ago, I didn't think that. I was really not hopeful. The last 2 games that I saw them play, they were better, than their game against Senegal. They were really sparkly, the US. Now, we're not talking about the US though. We're talking about Paraguay. And I think they are you hear the term dark horse said a lot. In this group, they are the one that can most surprise any one of the 3 teams that they're going to be facing on that given day. right? They could hold the United States. They could even beat the United States.
Yeah, they can make it really
decides
frustrating.
to retreat into its head. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just the red flags for me are the record on US soil is pretty poor. They weren't amazing on the road. When they did start to pick up points on the road, it was down to Enciso, and he's not there for the big games.
Yeah, right.
Without him, it's a different Paraguay side. And I think just think about how Neymar is going to be so valuable in the dressing room. It's the same with Enciso. And without him for the first 2 rounds, and they still don't know if it's going to be free for Australia, it's really upsetting because I would have loved to have seen him start against US. I think it would have caused their defense so many problems. But as I said, they've got a few names in there that can disrupt a really dodgy US defense. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see how they go, and hopefully they squeeze through.
And just out of curiosity, does Miggy Alderón have anything left? Is there anything left in that man's tank, or is he just like cashing in on that smile?
No, he scored in that final warm-up game, scored a screamer, and I think now with Enciso going to one side, he knows that he's going to have to be the main man and step up. So yeah, I think that may be a little bit harsh. I can see where you're coming from, but for Paraguay, I think he's going to have to step up, and I think he can. So this is the group of death, but I think that's because everybody can win it. So it's all about who steps up. Paraguay beat Brazil, Argentina, so we spoke about that. So if they can bring that confidence to the table, then they've got every chance.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Beautiful. Okay. If we can then move through to Group E and Ecuador. And so I look at this squad and look at this roster, and they've got some talent in there. Hey, I'm not just I'm looking beyond Moises Caicedo, who's probably their best player, but I don't know how would you assess sort of Ecuador? I mean, just looking in this group that they've got of Germany, Curacao, Cote d'Ivoire, again, they should get through. I think Curacao will probably obviously take a beating here from everyone, but yeah, how would you sort of assess Ecuador and how deep do they get?
Everyone is saying Ecuador are the dark horses and everyone's getting excited about them. I'm here to maybe say otherwise, if I'm going to put it that way. I think, look, defensively, they are arguably one of the best teams going to this World Cup. And clean sheets will take you far potentially in the knockout stages. And then when you're going to be relying on extra time and penalties. But I think can only take you so far. Germany, Cote d'Ivoire, I think both of them can cause plenty. That Ivory Coast game is going to be so interesting because they've got such a good attack against Ecuador's solid defense. Is it going to be a 0-0 or could it spill over? I'm not too sure. But yeah, look, defensively, William Pacho, Hincapié, Moises Caicedo, like they've got a lot of experience in the back line. Just going forward where they are limited, still relying on 36-year-old Enner Valencia, who scored 6 of their 14 qualifying goals. Super reliable from 12 yards. But what is he going to do against a top European defence, especially when they play Germany, or if they do progress? They should make it to the knockout stage, but I'd say anything past the round of 16 would be a hugely successful tournament for them. They've got some nice up-and-coming youngsters, but Ecuadorians are on the fence with their manager, who's so too defensive for almost their quote-unquote golden generation. There's a lot of talent in the middle of the park. Kendry Páez, Kevin Rodriguez, Alan Minder, Gonzalo Plata, all of them can play really good stuff, but you're still relying on a 36-year-old to win you a World Cup. It ain't going to happen. So, yeah, look, Ecuador will frustrate teams. They will be, everyone's licking their lips wanting to watch them, but they're not fun to watch. They're 8-0 draws in qualifiers. So people may lose that hype quite quickly. And there's a reason why they're 100-1 to win it. So, look, they're a good team, but will they win the World Cup? Sadly not. But it's a really interesting group, this one.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned all their draws because this one's for Gary. When was the last time Ecuador lost a match?
I love when you put me on the spot like this and throw me these curveball questions that I have no idea about. Go on, let's hear it.
September of 2024. Nearly 2 years since Ecuador has lost a match. Now they've drawn like 8 in qualifying, 2 in friendlies against Morocco and the Netherlands. So they've drawn more than they've won in that same period of time. And as you say, Nathan, that's the sign of a very effective, disciplined defensive team. And that will get you to the spot. But then what's going to happen after that, right? It might get you through qualifying. Probably will. Yeah. Especially when you have Curacao, who they should be. Even their aged striker should be able to score against Curacao, right? I mean, it's
look, I'm not slating Valencia. I think he's a very good striker. He turns up for his country, but say if Ecuador draw Spain, for example, or France in the knockout stages, is he going to have enough in him to worry some of the best defenses in the world? There's just too much pressure on him.
Yeah. That's fair.
Nathan, final question regarding Ecuador as a Chelsea fan is Kendry Páez. Because I believe Chelsea have signed him, is that my understanding? Is that correct? And he's playing at River on loan and he's been tossed into the sort of the loan sort of cycle. How good is he? Is he any good? I know there's a lot of hype around him. And again, but obviously some of these 16, 17-year-olds don't quite make it. So yeah, does he have a chance of being sort of in the conversation for young player of the tournament? Does he start or how does he feature here?
Absolutely. He is a top class player in the making, but there's so many foundations and what ifs off the pitch, which make a good player on it. Now, what he was doing in Ecuador was unbelievable. Looked like a generational talent, hence why Chelsea signed him, hence why he made his debut when he was 16. And it just hasn't worked out for him since. Maybe Strasbourg, which looked like the right environment for him, hasn't worked out at River Plate. He's been around the wrong crowd since getting a bit of fame, but I think that's being knocked out of him at River. They've got a really good manager there who's taken to him and is nurturing him. And I think the fact that in football nowadays, if you have the hype and you don't live up to it within 12 to 18 months, and you're a young boy taken out of an environment and put into the Premier League or London environment, people forget about that side of the game. So there's a lot of things which need to go right off it in order for him to excel on it. But honestly, if everything clicks with Kendry Páez, do not give up on him because he honestly can be world class. And I hope he starts to show that. But he has a really good relationship with Moses Caicedo for Ecuador. So hopefully we get to see that at the World Cup as well.
Beautiful. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so let's move on to Group H and then cover Uruguay, who this is, pretty comfortable group for Spain and Uruguay. You'd expect the two of them to comfortably go through and then sort of go from there. But Uruguay, again, same thing, looking at their roster of players. You see Darwin Núñez, you see Valverde, Ugarte. Any other players here that you think sort of, could give Uruguay a fighting chance? Because they've always kind of, in my opinion, overachieved in previous World Cups relative to the size of their nation, right? You think of the Suarez and the Cavani days and the Forlan and all those kind of things. So do you think we'll see a similar sort of performance from Uruguay this tournament?
They should get out of this group. It'll be a huge disappointment if they don't. On paper, still they've got some, you've listed there, they've got some quality players, maybe some of aging and Darwin Núñez, who hasn't played since February. So there's some question marks around who's going to potentially score the goals for them. I think Valverde's an excellent chance of being their top goal scorer. They should get through the first couple of games, but then they play Spain. And I think Spain could put them in their place. And if Spain put them in their place, they should then meet Argentina in the round of 32, which is going to be one hell of a game. So that's what we want to see. It's interesting with Uruguay because they're the only nation going to the World Cup that haven't played a friendly since March. They decided not to. Bielsa, El Loco, Maverick, of course, he was going to do things differently. Always announces his squads late. There's been a few injury concerns, which has made life a bit difficult for them. So we're going to see if that works or not, because if we flip it around, when I spoke about Paraguay, they played a game just before going to the US and then Enciso was injured. So maybe Uruguay are looking to protect some of their players. But then, as I say that out loud, their number 10, Georgian de Alesqueta, got injured in training and he's basically out for the tournament. So it's depending on which way you look at it. But this is a strange team because 2 years ago, going into Copa America, they were an outside chance of winning it. And they got knocked out in the semi-finals and then came third in that. And before that, because obviously the South American World Cup qualifiers goes on for so long, but before the Copa America, they beat Argentina in their own backyard. They beat Brazil. Everything was looking rosy. And then post-Copa America, they came back and didn't score in 5 and lost against Peru, who hadn't won in 10 games. And all of a sudden, there was talk that if Bielsa lost that friendly against England back in March, and it was going to be, if it was 3-4, 5-0, he was going to lose his job. And somehow Uruguay got a late penalty and got drew 1-1 with that. And maybe that's what saved Bielsa. So there's ifs and buts and a lot of grey clouds when it comes to Uruguay. I just want to see that Argentina game. I think that'd be really interesting. And I think, do you know what? In a one-off game, maybe that's who they need to play, a nation sort of who they're familiar with and who they've beaten on the way to the qualifiers rather than facing another top European side. But I'm not expecting them to win it. I'm not expecting them to really go past the round of 16 at a push, but they should get out of this group. If they don't, it'll be a real national embarrassment.
I would also like to add that there's a little bit of history between Uruguay and Argentina, which lends a little bit of fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that they're both fighting over the sun always gets me going, right? I mean, they can't decide which one gets the sun.
And they have the same national colors as well. And of course, then obviously sort of the Rio Plaza of Montevideo and Buenos Aires will be full of fireworks and hopefully it'll be the Rio de Sangre with all the sort of blood that's been spilled in it.
And really, who does sip mate better? I don't know. I don't get involved in those types of debates, man.
Having spent time in both countries, I will say that actually Uruguayan beef is better than Argentina. Apologies to all the Argentinian fans, but the Uruguayan beef is better than the Argentinian beef as well.
Jeez, Jerry, why aren't you wearing this shirt? Why are you wearing this shirt? You're just causing all kinds of problems today.
Causing all shit. Yeah, rage basing. Okay. That's
here's another interesting fun fact, because I went back and looked at some of my statistics. Uruguay is actually the youngest South American team on aggregate. They are, when you actually average out their doesn't mean they have the youngest players, but just on average, they're only 28.1 years old, which seems kind of high, but this whole World Cup is filled with experienced players. All the nations are putting in older players who've got some savvy. But yeah, Uruguay, young. Who knew? Even with old guys like Núñez and stuff up front. But
it's not that old. Is he 26 or something like that? He's not that old, I don't think.
If that's old, we're all
17,
done, aren't
so
we?
I don't know. Everybody looks. What can I say?
Qooligan button over there. Yes, fantastic. Okay, let's get through onto Group J. Argentina, current holders. It feels to me, and I think also Qooligan shares this opinion as well because we've been discussing this at length. They're kind of like they're really underrated. No one seems to have any expectations of Argentina this tournament. I don't know if you're feeling the same sentiment. Everyone's looking at Spain and France and some of the other guys, but there's no reason why they can't sort of be in the conversation and win this. But yet, no one seems to be sort of rating them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I keep going back and forth. I'm torn. I'm really torn. I try not to let like old data and history dictate how I feel, because there's only been two nations that have ever won back-to-back World Cups and all of that, and whether Messi should have continued and their preparation for this World Cup. I mean, they've played some extremely weak nations. They go into this without really testing themselves, like Puerto Rico. They played Angola in Angola because they got a nice paycheck out of it. Honduras, Zambia, they bypassed playing Spain in that final, which was planned for Qatar. Yeah, in Qatar, but obviously the trouble in the Middle East prevented that. And it's interesting based on that, because Spain wanted that game to go ahead. They were happy to move it anywhere, where Lionel Scaloni was very happy for that not to be played. And that was an indication to me, maybe he didn't want his squad to have any confidence not going into the World Cup. So replacing those friendlies with Zambia, Mauritania, which didn't go well because that finished 2-1 and Mauritania outplayed him in the second half. And that was Argentina's best side. But Argentina looked really good against Honduras the other day. And I know it's Honduras, but just the individual play and the build-up, and Scaloni's been there for 8 years now, so he knows how this works. If you compare it to Ancelotti, who's been at Brazil a matter of minutes, Scaloni's going in with a really settled squad. There's so much depth to it.
Won everything. Yeah,
I think there's just maybe a few angles here that if you were really forcing against Argentina, I think there was a few off-field things where, look, Martinez after that Mauritania win said there wasn't something quite right within the squad and he couldn't put his finger on it, which was a little bit of a concern. I even think down to, this is without me going all Mystic Meg here, but if we think about like Prestiani and the issue he had with Vinicius Jr. in the Champions League over the racist incident, Messi being seen clapping at the White House with Donald Trump didn't go down well back at home as well. And so a lot of neutrals who would normally support Messi in Argentina may not sit on the fence. So that is me scrambling potentially for neutrals not to be back in Argentina. But they're not bulletproof. But then I agree with you that they are going under the radar, because on the pitch, they're excellent. I don't need to go through the players here in terms of Enzo, McAllister, obviously Messi, Martinez, Julian Alvarez. Like, the depth is ridiculous, and they've been there and they know how to do it. But we all know about the curse, right? Defending it, the crown never really seems to work out. So there's no real evidence to suggest that they can't go and win it again, but we haven't seen them play anyone decent since the World Cup qualifiers. So is Scaloni trying to keep it the distraction elsewhere, or did he know by bypassing that Spain game that there are nations that could potentially beat Argentina? And with this new format, Argentina's route to the final, I know there's ifs, buts and maybes, looks a lot more difficult than it did 4 years ago. So I'm intrigued. They look ready, but they looked ready before Saudi Arabia beat them, and then they turned it back round. So it's a lot of ifs, buts and maybes, but the groups should be pretty simple for them, which means they get to rest players. I think Messi's minutes will be managed, but look, with Lautaro Martinez, Julian Alvarez, they're preparing for life after him anyway. So it's not like they're reliant on Messi, which is a ridiculous sentence, I know, but there's options. So yeah, look, there's every chance they can go and win it. And I think the fact that they're going to be on US soil, I think the environment's going to be good for them. Who knows? But they're probably the most, obviously the world champions, but the most positive out of all the South American nations heading to the World Cup. So I'm very intrigued to see how they get on.
What about injuries? I've been hearing and reading a number of things about the knocks, the questions, the fitness. There seems to be all sorts of concerns coming out of the Argentinian camp. I mean, at one point, I saw a list of 10 players that weren't training. It's hard to tell truth from fiction on a lot lot of this stuff. But
it's been kept under
anything
wraps.
That you know about there?
It's been kept. It's been very hush hush. So
right?
is that good? Is that bad?
I don't know. Yeah.
We don't know. We're going to have to wait and see, depending on the lineup in the first group stage. But the fact that their group is one of the weakest, and I think the draw is very kind. Look, maybe in 2 or 3 games time, they've got everybody back. But yeah, I've heard those rumors. I've seen it, but then some players have come out and said no. So like at this stage, we don't know. But the depth, that's what we can speak about. Argentina are a team that could have 8 to 10 injuries and still put out a world-class side, and it's strength in depth which gets you to the final and wins you World Cups. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see for that first lineup, won't we?
Do you think that any one of these 3 nations that they're up against has the potential to pull a Saudi Arabia?
No. I think once burnt.
That's fair. All right.
Once burnt. Yeah. Never underestimate Europe. Yeah, exactly. Never underestimate your opponents. Algeria will be tough. Don't get me wrong, but
they're tough.
That's going to be a really difficult game. But I think Argentina, you'd like to think, even though they won the World Cup, that they've learned from what happened against Saudi Arabia.
Sure.
So yeah, we'll wait and see.
All right.
And then Nathan, final question on Argentina on the youth players, and again, because I know Enzo Fernandez obviously was youth player of the tournament. I'm fascinated by this. I always look for the young sort of stars, and you mentioned it as well. So I think we share a similar interest here. They've got Nico Páez, who has had a phenomenal season at Como, and then also as well, they've got this Valentín Barco. And am I correct in thinking, and again, I don't mean to keep bringing this back to Chelsea, but Chelsea have signed one of them, or have they got both of them? Is that correct? All right. Can you help clarify that? And then the follow-on question is, do any of them start, and which one's the better of the two? Who do you think who could sort of be the star standout player?
I love Valentín Barco. He's an unbelievable player. And the fact that he went to Brighton, where Brighton are a team that do so well in the South American market, made sense. And then they completely played him out of position and it didn't work. And now he's at Chelsea on loan at Strasbourg. He, as a defensive midfielder, is going to be one of the best players in the Premier League over the next 5-10 years if he's utilised in the right way. And he's already started to feature in that position for Argentina as well. So he won't start, but he's a valid option. He's left-footed and came up through the academy in Boca as a left back and naturally just got pigeonholed as a left back. But he made his name in a 6-8 month period at Boca, which got them to the Libertadores final in 2023 as a central midfielder. He's so comfortable in the middle. He just has confidence, oozes class, very technical, can read the game exceptionally well, and just screams Argentinian footballer, to be honest with you. So, yeah, look, Chelsea have got a real good player here. My concern with Chelsea is they just try to sign everybody. So is there a path for him? Who knows? But I think, look, he's going to stand up at this World Cup. I think a lot of people are going to finally realise what a talent he is, because Scaloni seems to play him in the right position. And that's what it's all about sometimes. Brighton just got it wrong, but maybe that's Chelsea's game.
And then the other one, and then is it Barco, right?
No, Páez.
Sorry, Páez. Forgive me, Páez, yes.
Yeah.
Nico Páez, I mean, what a season he's had. I think the amount of goal contributions, and this is what Argentina need. They're not short of players in the final third, but they definitely need to have options with Messi retiring. They need to have 2 or 3 players who can operate in that position, that number 10 role, be creative, assists, goals, and he's done that in abundance in Serie A this season. So, yeah, look, this is going to be a World Cup more around him than Barco, for example. If he continues his club form into this competition, the more I'm talking about it, Argentina are just so good in the final third. There's almost too many options. It's a bit greedy, to be honest with you.
Fantastic. Okay, and then let's move on to the final South American team in Group K, Colombia, who have, I think, my understanding is in terms of like ticket sales and demand, this is actually the most in-demand game against Portugal in Miami, because obviously sort of the Ronaldo factor and then sort of the Colombian sort of geographical connection as well in Florida. Colombia will always show up. There's always lots of sort of lively. The fans are some of the real sort of real value here. In terms of their chances, I mean, in terms of players that they've got some solid players in there. So you'd expect them obviously to get out of the groups, but Colombia have always been that team where they sort of trip up over themselves, whether it's in penalties and sort of rounds of 32 and never quite go too deep. So yeah, what's your take here on Colombia?
They can sometimes go on previous squads, but they can sometimes turn towards not necessarily violence, but they go down the route of like kicking players and making it awkward for opponents and maybe playing it the wrong way, where they do head to the World Cup with question marks around them, but got to Copa America final. Like you said, they'll be heavily backed and heavily supported, which I think is going to be a huge plus. Yes, they still need James Rodriguez. He is still important to this team, but he helps them tick. And there's just an abundance of quality in that final third. Luis Diaz, John Arias, James Rodriguez make that front 3, Richard Rios in behind. And they've got a lot of height at the back defensively. James Rodriguez, excellent on set pieces. I'm not giving anyone brand new information there, but they've got height with centre-backs, and I think they can play ugly and score as well as play attractive football. Sometimes, as you said there, they shoot themselves in the foot with they get caught on the transition sometimes when trying to be a bit too clever. And the World Cup qualifying was a case of, similar to Uruguay, excellent pre-Copa America, slightly disappointing afterwards. And I think there's a ceiling with Colombia because I know it was a friendly, but it was competitive as it always is with South American teams, but they lost 3-1 to France reserves with their best team out. And maybe, again, there's a similar to what we're saying about Ecuador, there's just a golfing quality between maybe the 8 to 10 best nations in the world, and then Colombia potentially just sit out of it. But saying that, when Colombia find their rhythm, they're a joy to watch. The fans are going to be electric and behind them. I think that's going to count for an awful lot. They're going to be used to the conditions. They play in Barranquilla, which is just hell on earth for opponents. It's so hot. So they're going to be comfortable. And I think maybe that's where they're going to be underrated. That game against Portugal is going to be really interesting because they're going to be fighting for first spot potentially to play a third place team in the next round and maybe have an easier path through to not the final, but future rounds. So they are a really intriguing side. When they get it right, Colombia can hurt teams. When they get it wrong, I think they'll be kicking themselves. I think it's going to be a decision or just a bad error of judgment that will see them get knocked out of this tournament, because that's what normally happens with them. But they are edging, as much as the edge closer to success when we're talking about Copa America, etc. It's now or never for them, really, with the group of players who are all sort of ticking around 28, 29, 30. Like, where are they going to be in 4 years' time? James Rodriguez can't be in the next World Cup at 38. So, like, this is almost like last chance saloon for this potential crop of players. So maybe that puts a bit of pressure on. But what they have is more than capable of having a good run if everyone's on form.
Amazing. Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the age thing because they have one of the oldest defending groups. Their defenders average 30.7 years old. So there are only 2 of them, I think, that are under 30. So it is, as you say, the last chance saloon for this Colombian side. They have some, their attacking side's a bit more youthful, with the exception of Rodriguez. You didn't even mention Luis Suarez, who I think is one of the who could be one of the potential great players. If he gets on a hot streak and Colombia can make it through to some knockout rounds, you could see him potentially challenging for a golden boot. He has that capability.
Absolutely. Yeah. Too many players to name.
True. Very
no
true.
young, but as you mentioned, squad, there's no young players. There's no one under sort of like 24. I think that's the youngest player. So there's no possible sort of young player of the tournament creeping in.
They do have 2 players under 24, but I'm not sure. They're Gustavo Puerta and Andres Gomez.
Okay, yeah, good.
But I don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
They're just they're young and Ecuadorian, and they're on the team, and that's all I can say.
Wonderful. Super. Okay. And then Nathan, final question for you before we wrap this up. In terms of all the South American teams, who do you think goes the furthest and do they have a chance of winning?
Argentina go the furthest. I know that's a really boring, obvious answer, but in the betting, it's actually Brazil ahead of them just. So maybe it's not a boring answer. Argentina, I think they have a difficult route, but can I back Brazil if they stick with this 4-2-4 and the fact that they can't keep clean sheets? If you can't keep a clean sheet against the likes of like Tunisia, for example, and that's no offense to them, how can they potentially go far in this competition? 2 goals they conceded against Panama the other night. So yeah, they've got plenty of goals, but if you can't keep clean sheets, you're not going to win the World Cup. So yeah, a boring answer perhaps, but Argentina.
Beautiful. Wonderful.
Makes sense.
Super. Well, Nathan, thanks very much for jumping on. I'm sure we will have you back throughout the World Cup as well, particularly as the South American teams feature as well. Just to confirm, Copa Club is obviously where they can get more of your content and obviously follow and obviously sort of get details there. Qooligan, we will be back again tomorrow on the eve of kickoff as well.
So
doing
many
this
days.
daily, committing to this as well. So we'll get into it. Wonderful. All right, Nathan, thanks very much for coming on and until next time.
Thank you, Nathan. Peace.